Welcome back to the next in our series of Meet the Ambassador, where this week we are joined by Commonwealth Cruiserweight Champion Billam-Smith. We explore Chris's career in boxing, his step up into becoming a professional and working with his coach Shane McGuigan and nutritionist James Moorhen, as well as have an insight into his love for all sports, his friendship with fellow boxer George Groves, and his latest venture outside of the ring being his podcast, The Perfect Athlete. Let's get into it. Hello everyone and welcome back to the third in our series of Meet the Ambassadors. We're lucky today to be joined by Billam-Smith. Chris, great to get you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's just a great opportunity for our followers and obviously followers of yourself to get a bit more of an understanding about our work with you, but also your career to date and how you've achieved what you have so far. So I suppose no better place to start than right at the start of this. Where did boxing enter your life and how did you get into it?
Well, my middle brother Ben, he was always into boxing. He used to do it on and off for years and years, and I went a handful of times with him when I was about 12, 13, but wasn't really into it. Like I said, I probably went no more, single figures amount of sessions. And then I went to college and met my mate, who's one of my best mates now, Dean, and started training with him because he was doing amateur boxing. Went to train with him just sort of to keep fit for football and stuff and get fit and just sort of liked the idea of boxing, I guess. And then I went and watched them fight, and everyone, we were all there, all our mates and that were just chanting Dino. And I just remember having a bit of an epiphany and just thinking oh, okay, I want to do that. That must be an amazing feeling to have all the crowd there, all there for you, chanting your name. And then, 10 months later, I was in the ring having my first bout.
So it really wasn't a quick turnaround in terms of getting in and being involved in it then from watching your mate doing it?
Yeah, like I said, I was probably training up to before that for about 3 months before I watched him, 2 to 3 months before I went to watch him. And then, then I just fancied it and just gave it a go and just thought, I'll just keep training and see how I get on. I just wanted to have, at that time, I was just thinking, I'll just get in there and just for that experience, see what it's like.
Yeah, and how was that first fight for you? I mean, I won't necessarily press you for an answer as to whether you won or not, but what was that like in terms of obviously the actual fight in comparison to what the training had been like?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's all good. I won luckily, but I probably made quite a lot of people dizzy because it was just moving one way around the ring the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was just jabbing, and I just didn't. I remember one of my old coaches was saying just don't forget your jab. He goes, you'll probably forget everything in there. Just don't forget your jab. And pretty much all I did for the whole fight was just move to my left and jabbed and jabbed and jabbed. And it was good. It was a real good experience. I remember walking around the ring after, waving my finger like that, and got some stick for that in the gym on the following week. But yeah, no, it was a great feeling. Had a few friends there and that. So it was a great experience.
And then I suppose the bug sort of stuck from there really, and then just carried on to where you are today.
Yeah, I just stuck at it, and just because I loved that feeling so much of winning in there, and then just kept going, and I was doing okay, and I was sparring some good, people that are better than me, and holding my own and doing okay, and then I think I only had 3 or 4 fights in my first season, and then my first loss was in my 6th bout, was in the novice championship, so it's for people who have had less than 10 bouts.
Right.
And then I boxed twice in one day and beat the first lad, and then the second lad, I was 18, he was 32, and he actually I didn't get much warm up because I watched the fight before mine, thinking there was 3 fights or 2 or 3 fights in between the one that ended up being before mine and my fight, but they all got cancelled. So
right.
I was in the changing room wrapping my hand. No one had told me it got cancelled. I was just wrapping my first hand, and someone walks in and goes, Are you Chris Billam-Smith? Yeah, I was like, yeah. He was like, you're on now. And I was wrapping my hands on the way to the ring and just sort of warming up on the way to the ring. And then, I don't think it might not have changed the result. He was a lot stronger than me, but and he ended up stopping me, I think, in the 3rd round. So I was just a bit overwhelmed by his strength and stuff. So I was a bit of a late bloomer when it comes to strength. But no, lessons were learned, and unfortunately, he had to think the age limit was 33 then as well. So that was his last season. So
Right.
I get a chance for revenge. So I was a bit gutted about it.
Yeah,
But,
no, I can imagine.
yeah.
What was that first loss like then? Obviously, you said that you were getting into it, and that winning feeling was what was then motivating you and driving you to do more. How was it for you losing at that point, and what did that do for your sort of mentality?
I think I was crying walking back to changing rooms because it was just a feeling like no other. I was so committed and dedicated as an amateur, and just it was everything to me. I was like 18, 19 at the time. I think I was 18 at the time. It was just it was just a weird feeling, and just very. But then I think the next day I felt like I'd been hit by a bus. My neck was all tight and body was back. I could move. I felt ill. But yeah, it was a learning curve, and then but it didn't deter me. I just wanted to get back in there and try and put it right.
Yeah, and speak to a lot of obviously boxers, strong mentality and mindset to then put defeats behind them and come back. And was it almost that try and get back in the ring as soon as you can to make amends for that loss?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, that was my 6th fight, and then I had another one, I think, at the end of that season, and then I had one in the championships just the next season, and then the Western County final, like the regional final. I lost on points in that, so it was. But that's amateur boxing. Everyone loses, especially in that. It's very rare you see amateurs that go 10, 20, 30 fights unbeaten. Luke Campbell, my stablemate, obviously Olympic gold medalist. I think he lost 7 of his first 10 fights.
Right.
So, and he went on to fight for world titles and win Olympic gold medal. So you can't be too disheartened as an amateur. So
yeah. And what sort of age was it? Like you said, obviously started quite young in terms of going in and doing the training and whatnot. What sort of age did you think I'm pretty good at this? Like I'm gonna make this my profession and make something of it?
I don't really know if there was ever a moment. I sort of just went into the championships again, like, time after time, and I went into them the year after the second loss, and it was the next stage up. It was the under 20 bout category because I'd had 12 fights by then, and I ended up there was no one in my region. I ended up getting a bye all the way to semi-finals, and boxed a lad who had previously got to semi-final the year before, and beat him, and then got to the final, and the lad I boxing was in the final the year before, and I beat him as well. So I ended up winning it. They'd all boxed to get there, but I'd only had 2 fights in the novice championships. So and then I was like, well, once you've won the novices, you can't go back in them. You have to move on to the elite level. And I was like, well, let's go straight into them. And I went straight into them. Did really well. Boxed a lad in my 16th fight who had 51 fights and won loads of stuff as a junior. Broke my hand on his head, but won the fight. But then couldn't carry on in the championship. So that was sort of, but I think it's a blessing in disguise. Like, I broke my hand, so I was meant to be boxing the week after. But I was on a high still because I beat this kid who I shouldn't have really been in there with at the time, experience-wise, and I've gone on and beat him quite comfortably. Yeah. And then I couldn't box for the rest of the season because I broke my hand. So then it was, the lad who I would have boxed in the next round. I was like, right, I want to box him next. When I came in on the club show. So I boxed him and beat him. So in my head, I was thinking, all right, I'm at that top 4 in the country now. Like the final stage, and then I went in the championships, and again the elite championships, and just got to the semi-final that year. Then the year after the final, and it was just always that. I guess every setback sort of pushed me on. I never really had a setback, and didn't get further the following season. I just trained harder and pushed harder and improved as much as I could to get further on.
Yeah. What would you say has been the biggest sort of challenge for you to date, whether that be amateur level or coming through? Is it losing those defeats, or obviously, like you said, giving you that motivation? But what would you say was the biggest challenge you've faced so far?
I was injured in 2000 it's actually happened 2013, and then I kept boxing with it and went into the championships in 2014, and it basically my shoulder kept subluxing,
Right.
kept dislocated, and I'd try and rehab it, and then go back, and it just keep happening. I eventually had surgery in 2015, and after sparring, when was that? So 2014, I was sparring, and it went again in August time, and I was like, I just can't go on like this. Like, this can't. It's either get it sorted, and or stop, because there's no point. I was essentially a one-arm fighter, and so that was in August 2014. Then went through the procedure. About 2 weeks before it happened, I always used to stop drinking alcohol before the season started in September. But when I'd stopped it. I've been about 2 weeks in, and I was like, right, in fact, I'm going to see how long I can go, and go at least 2 years, because I could do a year, because I could do 9 months quite comfortably. So I'm just going to see how I can go, and I haven't drunk since. So but I got the injury during that time, and I think that was sort of my mindset was just very much, it was almost like it was meant to happen, because I'd already decided I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing this, I was looking after myself. So I think that was quite important during that time. Would have been very easy to put on loads of weight and get out of shape and stuff like that, because I was in a sling for 6 weeks, and then couldn't actually fight for 6 months. No, it was longer than that. It was 9 months after the surgery. I didn't fight. So I ended up being out the ring for 18 months. So then, and got back in the ring, went in the championships, and got to the final. So I'd say the injury, that sort of thing, was it wasn't hard at the time, but it's probably, when I look back, I was just making the right decisions. I had the right habits and the right systems in place to help me get through it. But I think that could have been a real difficult time for me. But also not getting onto the Great Britain squad just before my last amateur fight in December 2016. That would have been. I was on the third step, and it's like, once you get to that stage, it's either you're in or you're not. I didn't get on that, and that was tough to take, because I felt really good. I was doing well up there, and I thought I was going to get in, and I didn't. But then at the same time, it was a blessing in disguise, because I asked, obviously, my coach now, Shane McGuigan, to train me. He's a very, very good coach, one of the best in the world, and he said yes. So if I'd got on the GB squad, it might not have panned out as it has. So it can happen for a reason, as they say.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just what's the biggest thing with Shane, training with Shane? Like you said, obviously world-renowned coach, and what sort of things did that change in the way that you were doing your training, and how did that impact you?
Well, as an amateur, obviously they're volunteers, the coaches. So the gym was open Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we trained for an hour Tuesdays and Thursdays. Then I went and hired my own strength conditioning coach, and I was doing a nutrition course myself at the time. That was sort of just to help me with my career. And then when I do eventually get a nutritionist on board, I know I can, I know that they're qualified to saying the right things, etc., etc. And I was investing a lot in myself. But like I said, the boxing was 2 hours a week, and most of that was bags. Now and again, you get like 3 to 4 rounds of pads when you had a fight coming up, because the gym's so busy. Like I said, they're volunteered. To be fair, my coach used to meet me on a Sunday, and we used to go and do sprints and extra sessions and stuff, because he knew how much it meant to me, and it was he was always willing to do extra sessions with me when he could. He had family at home and stuff, but it was all unpaid for him. So that was fortunate in that sense. But the difference between that and turning pro and training with Shane, you're in a gym twice a day, every day. You're punching 4 or 5 times a week, and it's pads every time. So it was a massive step up for me, and but I think that's shown in my ability as well, and how much I've improved since I've turned pro, because I'm just doing more. And I'm obviously got a very good coach in Shane as well, and I think that is that's it's almost like the 10,000 hour rule. I'm just putting in more work, and putting in more correct work, and perfect practice makes perfect. So that's it. That was the biggest change for me, just a lot more boxing work.
And that's obviously what you've spoken about then, the amount of discipline and sacrifices in many ways that you'll have had to make. Was that something that was always sort of instilled in you, or was it something that you picked up along the way and as you started boxing realised that that's what needed to be done, or where did that come from?
Yeah, I think I've always had something in me. I remember being a kid, I was very fortunate as a kid. We had a massive garden. My dad set up a little football goal at the back, and I used to take chairs out there and make walls and do free kicks, like, you know,
Yeah.
Beckham's idol growing up. And so I was like 7, 8 years old out in the garden practicing free kick after free for hours and hours and hours on end. And I made sure I was free kick taker in every team I played for. So that was sort of me as a kid. So I think, you know, subconsciously I just had it in my head. I just knew that sort of practice make perfect sort of thing. So I've always had that in me. And I think when it came to boxing and a sport where it's all on you, and it's whether you win or lose is essentially 99.9% it's all on you, then, and what you put in, you get out. So I think that helped me massively. And I think I've always just, you know, had it in me. I like the control I have over, you know, the result in that sense. Because in football, obviously, you get the best game of your life and still lose. Where you know, in boxing, it's more under your control.
Yeah. And what was the support like for you? Obviously, going through your amateur years and whatnot, and obviously you said you had your friends that were coming to your fights, you were going to their fights. Obviously, there can be distractions at that point. What support was like for you when you were going through it?
Yeah, I was fortunate. Obviously, like I said, my brother was well into his boxing, so he always kept me on the straight and narrow. And if I boxed poorly, he'd be the first to tell me, and I had him there to make me accountable. And then my friends come. Like, there were a few friends who followed me everywhere. Like I said, the lad who got me into it, Dean, him and his mate came all the way up to Newcastle to watch me in the ABA final up there. But yeah, then my family, they just, you know, they supported me massively. You know, amateurs was different. I don't think my friends really knew what I was thinking in my head at the time and what I was capable of, and what it meant to me. It was, you know, it was everything. And obviously I've proven that now, and it is, and it's I'm fortunate enough to make it my career. But at the time, I don't think they realised that. I think it was sort of just, when's this phase going to end, sort of thing. And you know, the hobby is they're in office jobs, a lot of them, and they'd play football on the weekends, that sort of thing. So I just had a very different mindset to a lot of them, I think. And I just so they didn't always come. They come when it was local most of the time, and a few travelled, you know, around the country and stuff watching me. But yeah, it was the support was good, you know, especially my close family and friends. So yeah.
You mentioned obviously football a couple of times then, and obviously where you're located, Bournemouth being your club. Any other sports that you were sort of interested in as you were then growing up before boxing took over?
I tried every sport, mate, to be honest. Football was always my first love as a sport. It was everything as a kid, like I said, and the way I speak about it, and even now my passion for it is still there. I think it'd still be my dream job because they get paid a lot better than boxers. And I could get hit for it.
Yeah.
But it's I tried every sport. I used to play hockey on a Sunday morning, football on a Sunday afternoon. I used to go I had diving on a Thursday night. I'd have football training in the week. I tried fencing. I got an A-star in my trampoline in GCSE.
Wow.
So yeah, all sorts of random sports I tried, mate. Anything and everything. So yeah, it was. I think that is a big part to play. I think in children growing up and developing different skills. Like I said, I was doing all these different sports. I'm getting all these different motor skills. So I think when I started boxing, I was fortunate that I'd done all those other sports and I could pick things up quite easy. Whereas if I'd just played football, I probably wouldn't have got it half as good. So I think all the other skills I built up, and whether it's balance and things like that, but also the hand-eye coordination, all that sort of thing, just from I literally done every sport under the sun pretty much that I can think of. So yeah, it was. I think that helped me massively when I eventually started boxing after I left school.
Yeah, and I mean, when we were first introduced, you weren't far away from getting married, and obviously not reaching too far in. But kids, at some point, are you wanting them to sort of follow the same path and potentially get into boxing, or is it more just as you've said there, try everything and see what the passion is?
Yeah, it is, but I I don't think I'd want them to box. I want them to, but I don't think I want them to compete. I think amateur boxing is very pure, and it's everyone's a volunteer. No money's involved at the basic level. You know, only at the very highest Olympic level is money involved, and funding and stuff. So you're doing it because you love it. But then obviously that leads into pro boxing, and then being in pro boxing, you know, I'm fortunate to have a very good team around me. But it's a horrible business. I know some kids who can't sell a ticket, but they're unbelievable boxers. But because they can't sell a ticket, no one's interested in doing it, and they can't make money from the sport, which is not nice to see when they're so talented. They've given their whole life to it. But yeah, it's and also just watching your child, fight would never be nice. So hopefully they can live my childhood dream and become a footballer or something a little bit easier. And but yeah, just whatever they want to do, whether it's I think I'll definitely get them into lots of sports. I think me and my wife Mia, we always say one language, one instrument, and as many sports as possible, and see where they go with it.
Yeah. Was that ever a concern of your parents? Obviously, they must have noticed from early on, like you say, with your brother being involved in it as well, and seeing your talent. Was it ever sort of something that was then discussed in terms of not necessarily wanting you to follow the path that you have?
Yeah, I mean, my mum just laid back and just supports me whatever I do, but my dad didn't want me boxing. The reason my brother didn't actually fight for so long was because of my dad. I think they don't think my dad really let him. He just saw it as barbaric and stuff like that. But
yeah,
he understands more now. He's very, very supportive of me now. He works in the film industry, and he sells loads of tickets for me when there's fans there. In the film industry, and puts posters all over the studios and stuff of me, which is nice. And but yeah, there was a time where I reached the ABA final, which obviously you're there with the top two in the country. It's you and one other guy, and he was going away. He had a trip booked because he's into his sailing, and he had that booked. And my mum was like, "Oh, you're going to miss the final." And apparently he said to her like, "Oh, I'd rather him quit anyway." But now he's changed his mind now, I think, and I think he's glad that I never gave it up. And so yeah, it was. My dad didn't want me doing it, but yeah, in the end, being the youngest of three, I was the spoilt one and the golden child, so I got away with a lot more.
yeah. You touched on before as well about your nutrition. When did that become a bit more of an importance? Was that around the same time? Obviously, you started working with Shane, and when did you really start to put the two together in terms of your performance, your recovery, and all that type of thing?
Yeah, it's been an ongoing process, to be honest, since I started boxing. Obviously, when you're weight making, it's in your head one way or another, and I've tried all sorts of things before I learned anything about nutrition. Then I did a personal training course at college, which was good and sort of opened my eyes. Then I did a nutrition course with probably it'd be a rival of yours, I guess, Ben Coomber.
Right.
I did his nutrition course, and this was going back probably 8 years ago now, maybe longer. And then I had because I was into my sport and my personal training and stuff like that. I wanted to, educate myself as much as possible. But so I learned as much as I could. But I also boxing. I tried all sorts of low carb diets and everything early on, because you just you see one paper or one blog or whatever it was, and one article, and that's it. You follow that for a bit, and but I've learned what works for me now, and obviously I've got James Moran on board now, who you know well, who's superb. He's so knowledgeable. I had him on my podcast and stuff like that, and it's just I speak to him all the time, and that's been the last think it's been since I actually won the title, we've sort of dialed in a bit more on with him. I've actually been working with him for just over a year now. And so, yeah, that's been brilliant because he's a good lad. He's become a good friend of mine, and he's so knowledgeable, and we worked really well together. And obviously with the help of Nutrition X as well, obviously with my supplements and everything's in place now, so there really is no stone unturned, and thanks to James and Nutrition X.
And was there anything that he sort of came in and changed quite drastically, or was it just sort of tweaking things to, like you said, make them work for you and how to do it? And then I suppose second point to that question, in terms of touching on making weight, there's quite a lot of obviously fad diets and confusion around it. Was it difficult, especially in those early periods, to really get to grasps of what you needed to do for that and the right way about doing it?
Yeah, there's obviously my coach is very knowledgeable as well, and he has his way of making weight and rehydrating and stuff. And James sort of just helped make me accountable, hold me accountable for it. And yeah, it's just nice to have someone there. Just I have to send him my weight twice a week and things like that, and that just makes you just on point. And I've done my macros before, but then I hadn't done it in a while because you sort of just think what you're eating's good, and then then James just I started just figuring out what my macros were, and we had a discussion and making sure I'm hitting them, and just realizing that maybe I was under eating on my carbs and probably my protein as well, to be honest. Yeah. But the main thing was just holding me accountable, and just he's not like bothering me at all. He understands the training camp's hard enough, but he doesn't need to bother me. And he just, we'll have a catch up. We've got to catch up again this week, actually. Every couple of weeks, I have a catch up, actual phone call or video call, as well as just texts and messages, every week as well, and the weight's getting sent in. So yeah, he's been massive help to me, and yeah, it's just mainly just making me accountable.
Yeah, and give us a little bit of an insight into what those training camps can be like, because obviously I've spoken to you a few times in terms of when we've taken supplements, whether that pre-camp or a few months before you're going into it or whatever it may be, and they sound pretty grueling in terms of what that training can look like. So give us a bit of an insight into how they are.
Yeah, so we usually start, on average, I'd say about 8 to 10 weeks out of the fight, but I'm sort of person who I'm always half in shape anyway. And if I'm either sat at home, and home for me is, relaxation, and it's where I come home on the weekends, because obviously we're based up in Kent currently at Kent University. So I come home at the weekends, and then it's sort of like just relax. So that's my mind is, and the habit is to relax in this environment. So I can't sit at home too long. I just get agitated. So I end up going to camp early most of the time.
Yeah.
And then so like I said, we start usually 10 weeks out, and we do 2 sessions every day, Monday to Friday. We punch at least 4 times a week. So we'll do a couple of runs. So it'll be like a Monday and a Friday we'll run. Tuesday, Thursday we'll do strength. Wednesday we'll do the dreaded McGuigan's gym circuit. And then we'll punch every day as well. So it's usually anywhere between 9 and 11 sessions a week, because we'll probably do like a light steady on the weekend as well, like Saturday morning, and then we'll wrestle Monday morning and do sprints or whatever it is. But yeah, it's pretty grueling. It's can be hard to fit it all in, and definitely got to be on top of it all. And I think that's something that comes into it is the nutrition, like we were just saying, and little things like having the shakes. The ultimate shakes for me are brilliant, because they've got everything I need in, and it's so simple. You've just trained. You can have your ultimate shake, and then and then it's just that, like, it's just easy. You only need a little bit of food, but get plenty of calories in that shake as soon as possible, and then start refueling for the next session, basically. And then it's recovery after that in the evenings. So looking after your sleep and all those things. So try and stay on top of, there's a lot of areas that can be improved and looked after. So yeah, just try and look after as much as I can and control as much as I can, but to sort of deal with the load.
Yeah, and anyone that's obviously seen your Instagram will have seen the part of that recovery when you're back home is a bit of a dip in the sea.
Yeah.
using I suppose what you've got on your doorstep.
Yeah, I mean it's more. I think it's more just for mind. Like, I mean, it's obviously good for your body, but it's just the feeling once you've done it and you get out. Usually do a run along the prom, which obviously I'm very fortunate to live in Bournemouth, where it's very, very nice and picturesque. Not always. I've done a 10K probably. When was that? October time, and it was 8K of it was along the prom into the wind.
Yeah.
And it was horrendous. It was into the wet, cold rain. Didn't go in the sea that day. But yeah, it was. It's nice that it's nice to have that, on the doorstep and be able to get in the sea, even if it is freezing cold at the moment. I'm not sure what the temperature of the sea is at the moment, but it's definitely cold.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing you around December time and going in, and yeah, far braver man than I am to to go and do that. Who would you say is sort of your idols? Who were you looking up to when obviously you were getting into it, and even now, who do you sort of look up to and take inspiration from?
All different athletes, but I'd say boxing wise, it was always George Groves. I just loved his. He was always exciting to watch. He spoke the truth in his press conferences, but also added a bit of spice and stuff like that. He was very good at the fight. And then obviously I got the honour of sparring him and eventually becoming his stablemate. And now we talk, every couple of weeks and stuff. So become friends. So it's very, very surreal when I think about it, because we used to travel. We would travel to Manchester for the Fox fight.
Yeah.
I remember getting my tickets for one of his fights at the XL. I was at the James DeGale fight, and I probably went to quite a lot of his fights. His later fights. Obviously, he was I was in the gym when he was fighting the likes of Chris Eubank Jr. and at the weigh-in he got me to walk out with a belt. So that was nice. My first time I held a world title, so that was a nice feeling. So yeah, it was George for me was just very exciting, and he just was a grafter, and I got to see that firsthand. And he was so effective at what he did. He had an unbelievable jab until after the Eubank fight, because his shoulder popped out. For me, George, as a Brit and just everything about that he was sort of an idol of mine and definitely my favourite boxer. But then, like I said, nowadays there's plenty of other athletes, the likes of LeBron James and people like that who look after themselves like they do. Roger Federer, those who hold themselves very well. They're sort of the gentlemen in the sport and at the top of their game, and at such an older age compared to most of the other athletes as well. So it's really good, and just following those sort of people at the top of their game and for such a long time, and the whole thing about being an athlete and that they're an athlete for life sort of thing, rather than just their peak years and then they just drop off the face of the earth. I like that sort of mindset that they have.
Yeah, and you touched on the name there. Obviously, the gentleman being associated to yourself. Then, I mean, from our perspective, we've worked with you for a little while now, and genuinely one of the nicest blokes that we've met within the sport. And obviously, it's a privilege for us to be associated with you and helping you on your journey. But where did that name come from? Because obviously, I can relate and understand from my dealings with you. But where was the inspiration with that?
We were trying to think of a name for me in the gym. They obviously the pro boxing world is very much about selling yourself and things like that, and trying to make yourself into a brand. And it was Shane who came up with it. He just said, "I've got a nickname for you." I didn't really have any idea of what like anything to call. I had no idea. And then Shane said, "Oh, what about like the gentleman?" And then they were like, "Oh yeah, that works," and stuff like that. And then, so yeah, it's sort of given to me really. I don't think it's something that you can just start calling yourself. But yeah, they gave me that nickname, and got passed by the wife as well. So that's good.
Yeah, no, I can imagine there would have been worse ones for her to have had to deal with, I suppose, than that one.
Absolutely.
May put the two questions together, but what would you say is the sort of the most memorable fight that you've been involved with so far, and what's your biggest achievement in boxing to date?
Biggest achievement, and I've got two big moments, but one actual fight-wise was the Craig Glover fight. Obviously, winning the Commonwealth title, everything was on the line in that fight. If I'd lost that, it would have very much been back to the drawing board for me, and would have been back-to-back losses after the split decision loss to Richard Riakporhe. So yeah, that was a massive night for me, going up to Liverpool into Craig's backyard, and the vacant title was on the line, and I just didn't have a good camp either. I had a terrible camp with sparring. People kept pulling out. I think I did do a fair bit of sparring for it actually, but it wasn't the actual quality of this. I was having to travel to London from Kent, spar, and then travel back, and it was just a nightmare to get the rounds in. So it wasn't the most ideal camp, but I just knew on the night I'd be all right. I just, in my head, I sort of just very headstrong. When it's fight night, it's fight night. So it doesn't matter what's happened, or it's go from there. So yeah, that was a massive night, and I think that shows in the emotion. If you've seen the end of the fight and the celebration, somebody actually drew a picture of it, because there was a photograph of me just screaming. After, and so a local artist from down here called Chris Small actually drew the picture, which I've got up on my wall now, of the celebration, and it really sort of gets the moment in that picture. Brilliant. But also the Richard Riakporhe fight. As I was doing my ring walk, I'd sold like 230 tickets that were in the O2 Arena. And everyone's just there going, Billam, like shouting. And, it was that, like I was saying earlier, the reason I got into boxing was me and all my mates there chanting Dino. And it was exactly the same thing, but it was just like on such a larger scale. Like, and I was just, my name's going around the O2. And for me, that was just such a sort of light bulb in the sense of that's why I started the sport. For that moment, it felt like it was for that moment. Obviously, the result didn't end up going my way. It was a split decision, and even though we won the fight, but it was for me that was a special moment, because it wasn't to do with the boxing; it was to do with everything. The reason I started the sport, and I sort of having that epiphany, like I said, all those years ago. And then I was doing it inside the O2 Arena. So, it was amazing to have all your friends, family, and even some people I didn't really know there, chanting your name. And it was, that was a special moment as well.
Yeah, and obviously we spoke before your last fight as well, which was slightly different in terms of no fans there outside. And I know you were obviously happy just for the fight to go ahead and wanted to get in the ring again. But how was that in comparison to obviously what you've done before and the feeling without anyone necessarily there?
Yeah, it was different, but I think a lot of people ask me, was it a lot different? But you're prepared for it. It's not like you've walked into the arena and nobody's in there all of a sudden. You're mentally prepared for it. You've still got the ring walk. You've still got the announcement. You've still got the ring and the stage and the lights and all that. The only thing I was concerned about is when we went from the hotel to the the garden, the matchroom garden. It was roasting hot, and I was thinking I'm gonna have to change my game plan here, because I'm usually a very quick starter and a high-paced fighter. But I was like, I'm not going to be able to keep it up in this heat, because it was the 7th of August. It was a lovely, lovely day. We'd gone outside at the hotel to walk around the garden in the day, because you usually do a little walk on fight day, and we were going to do a couple of laps of the garden, and as soon as we walked outside, Shane goes, "We're doing one lap, and you're going back inside," because it was just roasting hot. And but thankfully, when I just went to do my ring walk, it cooled down a lot, and even though I was in my gown, which can get quite hot, and it cooled down. I was like, right now, like I just sort of calmed myself there. I was like, right, I can just do what I need to do and not, be too conservative or anything like that. And thankfully it cooled down, so I just get to business.
Yeah, and it was around the time of your wedding, wasn't it? Was there much stick from your wife about it being so close?
No, well, we were meant to be getting married in Italy on the 8th of August originally, but obviously everything that happened, we had to cancel that.
Yeah.
And obviously the fight ended up being on the 7th of August. But then we got married 3 weeks after that, on the 28th. So it was just a lot smaller back home, but it was nice and intimate, and just close friends and family there. A lot different to what we'd had planned in Italy,
Yeah.
but it was just as special a day.
Yeah, and you touched on before, and I think it's certainly getting a lot of traction. A lot of people talking about what you're doing, obviously outside of boxing now as well, with your podcast. Where did that come from, and how are you enjoying that, doing that side of obviously the sport and speaking to various athletes and people that you've been involved with?
Yeah, I just sort of had an idea. I was listening to a few podcasts, and like I said, the way people look at the being an athlete, like I said earlier about LeBron James, recovery, and all the intricate bits that sort of make up being an athlete, being the perfect athlete. Pardon the plug, but it's that just intrigues me, and it always has. And that's sort of any little thing to get better, any 1-2% to get better, I've always been interested in. So yeah, it's taken a bit of a backward step with a fight coming up March 20th. So I've been able to put as much time into it, but I'll definitely be taking it up again soon. But yeah, it's I've obviously spoke to a few people on there, and it's just about speaking to different athletes in all different sports. I mean, I've had a darts player on, and Scott Mitchell, who, shout out to Scott, actually just got his PDC tour card 2 weeks ago or last week. So he's now on the tour, which is great. I've had a female polo player. She's actually the second best female polo player in the world. Obviously had James on, James Moran, the nutritionist. I had a breathwork specialist on, George Groves on, and Jay Morton, who was in the SAS and obviously on SAS Who Dares Wins. Because just wanted to speak about as many different athletes or people involved in athletes as I could, and how even though people don't see darts players as athletes, they are in their own right. I certainly couldn't do that same action for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day. Or I think Phil Taylor's used to just 7 hours a day just throw darts at a dartboard, and that's its own mental strength in itself, and takes a very special kind of person and special kind of athlete to be able to do that. So yeah, and there's all different sports I'd love to get involved with and get on the podcast and speak to, and it just interests me to see different things work for different people. So that's what I've been up to. But I think it was just sort of sprung on me by lockdown, and my love and passion for being an athlete and everything that goes into it.
Yeah, and again, I think to round things off, it'd be wrong of us not to talk about your fight, obviously, which isn't too far away. I know we were speaking obviously off camera before, a few frustrations at the moment, but how are things going with that?
Yeah, camp's been good. Just struggling. I was meant to box this lad in November. He suffered an eye injury, and now he's still having problems with his eye, or getting the medical and passing the eye test. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on with him. So we tried to get somebody else in for the same date. So it's been slightly frustrating, but it's the sport. I'm lucky to be out or be considered for these shows. There's a lot of boxers out there that aren't even getting out. So I'm lucky in that sense. But training wise, it's good and fit and healthy and ready to go.
Yeah, well, I think it's been a great insight into how you started and your career to date, and I think the overriding thing for me, listening to obviously what you've just spoken about then, and obviously conversations that we've had in the past, is that determination and that the will to win, the motivation, but also that bit of wanting to have a better understanding for yourself and putting the effort in to do that. And like I said, I think that definitely alludes to the nickname that you've got. I think it's, like I said before, a privilege for us to be working with you and continuously supporting you. So thank you for jumping on and explaining and going through that for us and giving people a bit of an insight into you. So thank you.
No, thank you, and thanks to Nutrition X for your support so far. Like I said, it's been a massive help for me. Like I said, I was probably under eating on my protein and things like that before, so the bars and the shakes and all the vitamins as well have been absolutely spot on. So it's a pleasure for me.
No, perfect. Well, like I say, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up soon. And fingers crossed we can get someone in for the fight on the 20th, and you can do your business then.
Nice one. Thanks a lot, Jack. Appreciate it.
Cheers. See you soon.